I guess the advice for young people is that, first of all, young people have the right to be doing this stuff. Young people have the right to have a seat at the table. If we look at the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, which turned 30 last year and is the most widely ratified human rights instrument on earth, Article 12 of that says that young people basically have the right to an opinion and have the right to express that opinion and to be considered in public policy. That's at the national government level all the way down to the local government level. And it also touches on businesses and on all parts of society. So it's not just that you have the right to be in these conversations. The conversations and the things that you want to do, they're not complete without you there. And so it's really good that you're actually engaging. And secondly, you can do a lot on your own, but you can't do everything on your own. And so by working with other people, it's the most powerful way to create a lot of change. There's an old saying, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. So this is a bit of a discussion about how you can join with other people, get the people around you who have a similar state of mind, and be able to achieve big things together. The first thing is to define what a stakeholder is, and this isn't a dictionary definition, but I think of stakeholders as anybody who is impacted by a problem and anybody who has power. Power is the capacity to act. So anyone who has the power to make a difference on a problem. When we think of stakeholders, it's easy to think quite small scale. It's people who are very similar to me, but actually the stakeholders on the issues that you guys are going to be trying to address. So it's important to map stakeholders for a few different reasons. Firstly, because there are actually people who are impacted by an issue, and those people always deserve to have a seat at the table, but they don't always have a seat at the table to begin with. And often one of the first things to do in a campaign is to think about who are the people who are most affected by this, who are the people who are affected in the normal way, say like the typical family who uses the local park that's polluted. And also who are the people that are impacted in a really particular way, who are the people who are maybe from a different background, who have different abilities and disabilities, who have issues with language and things like that, people who may have different levels of education. There's all sorts of ways that make people particularly vulnerable to harm or to a problem. And so actually inviting them to the table is really important. Any campaign that's run without those people at the center might actually be doing more harm than good. The solution that you come up with might actually not be solving the problems that you want to fix at all. Stakeholders are important to map for other reasons as well. You don't know how powerful your movement can be until you figure out who might have a place in your movement. So it's important to figure out who your potential allies are. You might not know what obstacles are coming in until you do stakeholder mapping. And finally, your campaign might only be part of a bigger movement. And so figuring out where what you want to do fits in with broader movements, with broader trends is really important, because what's in your head is not as strong as a whole bunch of people coming together and imagining a different way of doing things. When you're brainstorming stakeholders and thinking about people and groups with power, you want to think about who are the people who experience the problem, who are the most important. You need to think about the decision makers. It's important also to think about media and people who observe. Maybe there's a human rights organization who you can reach out to. Maybe there's a local news organization. Maybe there's big international news organizations for the right kind of issues. Often there's businesses and business groups who might have an impact for or against our campaigns as well. Maybe there's some charities or some not-for-profit group, or even social service providers who can make a difference. Who are the celebrities and influencers? A lot of people pay a lot of attention to what celebrities and influencers say, and a lot of those people can make a really big impact. And also, who are the people who know what they're talking about? The experts and academics and trusted thought leaders. Those people can be really important stakeholders as well. So you've just done a big brainstorm. You've got a list of maybe 10 or maybe 200 people or organizations that you've identified as stakeholders. Now it's the time to figure out who are the most important ones to be looking at. So to do that, a lot of advocates and activists use this kind of tool. It's called a power map. A power map is just a really simple graph. On the up and down axis, the groups that we're going to put at the top are the most powerful, and at the bottom is the least powerful. And then we've got another other axis, the line that goes from the left to the right, the groups who are all the way on the left are the ones who are the least supportive. They're like negative support, they're actually opponents. And the ones on the right are more supportive. They're potentially the members of our campaign, and we're probably going to be on the right side of that line. So once you've drawn your graph, the next thing to do is to take all of those stakeholders and put them on that graph. So you see the green dot here is a group that's pretty powerful and is only a little bit opposed to the idea. You see on the right, you see the red dot. They're very supportive. They're all the way over to the right, but they're not very powerful. A lot of groups are actually going to be in the middle. They're potentially powerful, but they're not doing anything at the moment. And they might be supportive or might oppose, but they haven't really been educated about the issue. Now, you're going to notice a pattern that the ones in the top right hand are going to be probably your allies, your campaign supporters, your volunteers, your members, the people who are taking action. We really love those people in the top right hand corner. The ones in the bottom left hand corner, they're not supportive, but they're not really able to do much about what we're trying to do. And so we don't really need to think about them too much. The ones in the top left-hand corner, they're the ones that we might need to worry about, or we might need to think about. They're the ones who are opposed to the idea and have the power to do something about it. And then a lot of the time we find the young people, the volunteers that we're talking to are going to be in the bottom right-hand quadrant where that red dot is. They're supportive of an issue. They've got a problem that affects their lives and they want to see it changed, but they don't really have the capacity to act. They don't really have power yet. A lot of our job as organisers and activists and people who are trying to make a difference in the world, our job is to try and move supportive people up, move them so that they're getting more powerful, and move everybody to the right, try and make everybody more supportive. And if you can't really make anyone more supportive, then see if there's ways to make them less powerful, a bit more negative than a lot of campaigns ever have to get to, but that's sort of the reality of doing this. And as campaigners, we need to figure out when is the right time to focus on empowerment and education, and when is the right time to try and focus on addressing some of our detractors. By looking at these graphs, it's often much easier to figure out who are the most important groups to target. Maybe someone is very powerful and a bit supportive, and just by meeting with them, you could find a really strong ally. Maybe someone's really supportive, but doesn't really know what to do. Then maybe you can hold an event to educate those people in how to engage with their politicians or how to write letters to businesses. Maybe you could get a petition, and so all those people can actually put their name to a campaign instead of just feeling like they're out on their own. And all of a sudden, these people who were disconnected are now connected into one big movement. And that's the power of power mapping, is you can figure out who are the stakeholders who you need to pay the most attention to right now. So once you've done the power mapping, you've done your big brainstorm of your long list, you've done your power mapping, and you've got a smaller list of organizations. Then is the time to do a really big focus on those particular ones. And I find it might be useful to focus on 1 to 10 at a time when you're trying to do this focus. If you're trying to do a lot of research on 50 organizations, you're going to get a bit confused. So one of the things that I do after power mapping is I take maybe those 10 most important organizations and I just do a bit of a mind map. I draw some lines to symbolize how they're connected. Then you can also focus on particular stakeholders. If they're an organization, what's their guiding interests? What's their mission statement? What's the work that they do? What are the things that they really care about? If they're a person, then what are their personal, deeply held beliefs? Do they have some experience with this issue? Are they really, really passionate about one particular issue that's going to be a good focus for them? Are they of a particular faith and you can talk to them in those terms? Do they have family or friends who are connected to these? Is there a person who's really influential? For a lot of politicians, they might have key advisors or just people whose opinions they really trust and respect. And this is often where the academics can come in and do a lot of good work. I guess particularly when you're talking about mapping your potential allies, the people that you and groups that you want in the movement but aren't yet in the movement, it's really important to talk to them and have sometimes quite an open conversation about what are the things that are most important to you to that organisation. What are the ways that they want to get there? What are the things that are most important to me and the most important to our campaign? And where do those two things align? And where you can find that alignment, that's probably going to be the basis of your campaign. Trying to get everybody together and find what is the very specific thing that we all agree on. I've done this with groups of 3 or 4 people sitting around a table in a recent campaign working with World Vision, and sat down with about 200 people in individual meetings to talk about what their vision for the campaign was. And the campaign that we thought we were going into changed so much over the course of that, but got so much stronger. Unless you actually have those conversations with the stakeholders and find that shared vision, it's really hard to do those. But the more shared vision you have, the more powerful your campaign is. It can be really important to do that. Often what will happen if I'm doing a campaign is we'll start by getting just like our small team, our group of like 5 or 6 people together to do some of these power mapping exercises. And then we'll go off and have conversations with all those organizations, all those stakeholders that we've selected. And then when we've had enough of those, that we've got a good idea of what the common ground is, then we can bring people together and say, hey, this is what we're thinking about for this campaign. Let's all meet each other, get to trust each other a little bit, get to say where we're from, why we all believe in this campaign, and create that sense of a shared purpose. That's something that you'll learn when you're having the conversations with these stakeholders as well, is like, how involved do you want to be in this campaign? Because there's going to be a full spectrum of responses to that, and all of those responses are valid. Obviously, we want people and stakeholders to actually do the work. Actually, this is a really important point. You're not trying to find the idea that most people think is a good idea. You're trying to find the idea that most people are willing to put in work for. The most important thing, the thing that will pull you through, the thing that will pull all of your other campaigns through, is one particular idea. And that's the idea that I can make a difference, that you can make a difference, that together we can make a difference. And that can be really hard. And the reality is, a lot of the time in campaigns, a lot of the time you lose, or a lot of the time you win something, but it's less than you were hoping for. And the thing that is the biggest killer, the biggest danger, is losing that belief that you can make a difference. And I'm here to say that you can make a difference. I've seen tiny little local campaigns and huge national and international campaigns that have all made a huge difference. That doesn't mean that every campaign is going to win, but some campaigns can, and maybe this next one can as well. You have to hold in your mind always the fact that, like, this might fail and we need to prepare for that, but also this might just work. And the idea that this worked, that's the idea that pulls you through. Because history has showed us again and again and again, that's when thoughtful people get together, they actually can make a difference. That's how we've overcome so many social issues. That's how we've made improvements on so many things, on things that get people's passions up and things that are like just boring local administrative issues. So yeah, history says that this works, and who are you to doubt that? You can make a difference.